after the beautiful opening reception that we had. Who was here for the opening reception? Just like put your hand up.
Savell.
I mean, it was amazing. And I was telling Becky this, and do you guys all know Becky Savell? Most people do. She is responsible for all of this. So thank you, Becky. I just want to say that opening reception, I was asked by my general manager, so Sandy, how many people do you think will be here? So we wanted to figure out how many drinks and things that we would put out. And I said, maybe 50 people, tops. We were packed. It was a packed house. This guy brought in, we upstairs and downstairs. We were packed, and it was amazing. And
there was no booze, though.
No. I know. What is our problem? What is our problem? Just so you know, part of the show is indeed down here, as you can see, in our lower gallery, and then in our upper gallery, there are more pieces up there. So feel free after the show to pop up there and see the other part of the show. But actually, John's going to take us through and talk about a lot of all the work in the show. So you will actually see those pieces down here via the slideshow. Again, thank you for being here. And this event really does kick off something that we've had in mind, so thank you, John, about having community conversations with people in our community who are masters at their craft. And John, as we all know, is a complete master at his craft. And at the craft of photography and the discourse of photography, but also his craft of teaching, the way that he sees the world. And we're going to see a glimpse into that today. So I have chills. I hope you do too. And so please join me in welcoming John Gray.
I have to hear from you, and we just have to say one simple thing, 3 words in a row, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. I want to hear you. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
You know who said that? Anybody remember that name? She was one of my stories.
It's in a book.
It's on the book. That Dan published. Yeah, it's Cartier-Bresson.
Oh, yeah.
And Cartier-Bresson once said something very important. He said, once he takes the photograph in the camera, it's over. You don't have anything to think about. There's no printing, there's nothing, because somebody else prints your work, and you never crop anything, and you never do it. It's so much different than now, is it? So much different than we are now. So one of the things I wanted to look at this work, I think about, what I think is interesting for students to think about from the beginning. That's why none of this work looks like anything like anybody else's work. That was part of the focus that I had in my focus teaching, was to make sure that people found their own vision rather than my vision or somebody else's vision, although I introduced them to a lot of people. I brought one just because of fun, because it's right in front of me. This is a book by Elliot Porter, published in 1972. And when he started photographing birds, he realized that it's expensive to be a photographer. Back then, he did dye transfer prints, which means you had to have 3 separate prints, 3 separate matrices for red, blue, and green, cyan, magenta, and yellow, to produce a full picture. And then he decided, how do I afford for that? And he said, well, I'll apply for grants. And he got a Guggenheim grant to help pay for his work. And just like the work behind us, the immigration work by John Castillo, he won a number of awards in Chicago, and he won a $500,000 grant to put an exhibition together in Chicago's airport. $500,000. Now, one of the things I have to tell you, that Chicago is the best place in the country to be for photography, as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, I'm not going to argue about that.
John, I'm going to break in real fast. I have all the slides, because I have all the slides of all the work and all the artists in the show.
Who did it?
So,
did you do it?
I did.
Wow.
So if that, do you
Yeah, we're going to start. Just put one up and put one up. And, yeah, and we'll start from there. I want you to, Casey Alfred was an interesting student. Can you hear me? Clear? Okay. Casey was a part of the focus on my life always has been photojournalism. And so a lot of photojournalism comes through the program, and some of it you'll see here is photojournalism. And upstairs is Dan Winters. And Dan Winters' work is a photojournalist. He always considered himself to be a photojournalist. So the fact is that was part of the structure hidden in my classroom. It was always this idea of being aware of society, culture, of being different groups of people, conflicts, all the rest of it. So Casey Alfred, and you can switch to the next slide. Oh, yeah. This is one of his most famous photographs. This is the winning championship putt. And he got that moment, that really incredibly precise moment. And Alfred, I knew Alfred for a long time. He was so good. And one day he was working for, I think, at the Thousand Oaks News Chronicle. But he said, I said, I want to be near the ocean. What do you want to do? You want to be? He said, I want to be where I can surf. So I called another former student who is still around, Ronnie Galgano. Some of you may remember Ronnie. But Ronnie, I said, Ronnie, you're working at the San Diego Union. Why don't you talk to my friend Casey Alfred? And so they talked, and before you know it, he's been there now, I think, over 20 years. And he's at every Olympic, and he's at every possibility. So one of the things I always loved about journalism is that it always gave you an opportunity to make a living taking photographs. That's the next one. Terrific, dramatic. All of his photographs have this sort of point of view and dramatic that he concentrates on. But it's also, again, goes related back to the Elliott Porter and to Castillo, is the idea of a project. You know, I don't know how many of you are photographers who have projects. You know, I have one here, which I should show you for a minute. I'll show you later, but you may want to see it later. I have this wonderful project by Matt Mahurin. This is the front one of the piece upstairs, and this is the book that Matt produced for his work for Tom Waits. That's a project. Now, I learned something from a long time ago from photographers who I have great respect for. He said, why are you worrying about being exhibiting stuff? Why not publish books? So yesterday, I got a message from John Castillo that his first book is being published right now on Skylark Press. His car culture is being published for $35. If you're interested, you can send me a note. I'll send you where it's going. But that's how you work. You get to work out there, and people get a chance to see you and take the time to look at your work. Okay, and now we get to Becky Brister. I have to tell you that Becky is, without question, one of the interesting students I had in my career. She almost met me in every office hour. She almost showed up. She always had a question. Question might have made me angry. I mean, she would be asking questions I couldn't really deal with. I'm not an administrator. I can't control other faculty. I can't control other people. But she took on this project, which is a remarkable project, of taking care of her grandmother. I mean, and so this is, if you look at the pictures, this is just from the book, right? These are from the book?
These are from the book.
Yeah. So on the wall is a separate series of the same issue of his grandmother. And in the four-piece photograph over there on the far wall is after Grandma dies. But the other photographs on the left of that are quite beautiful, sensitive. But it's a project, again, it's one project. And I think it worked on it for 5 to 8 to 9 to 10 years as she photographed her grandmother. I mean, because nobody else would take the time, so she took the time to take care of it. And we had a conversation about that. And this is one that I challenged her with. I said to her one day, I said, I'm so tired of these old people, young people in semi-nude and boudoir photographs. What's happening to Grandma? So this is the photograph that she made during his work response to his grandmother living back in recently. Next one. Okay, now on the wall, take a picture. I think those are actual prints that are very interesting to how he started. Bromberger, you can't believe. I'm sorry. Were you here when Bromberger was around? Yeah, you remember. He would put his self-timer on his camera, and he would throw it up in the air and catch it, taking the photographs. And he began to develop a sense of humor about his work. So these two pieces of work, I think, represent part of that wonderful sense of humor. And he was a really interesting character because he was 17 when he started teaching at Moorpark, taking a class at Moorpark. And on top of that, he did some of the most profound images about the Seattle AIDS hospice, and two of which were beautifully run in Life magazine because he had photographed the gay pride parade for a very long time, and then when he moved to Seattle, I asked him if he was going to be photographing twigs when he gets to Seattle, and so before he knew it, he was connected with this hospice, and the photographs are amazing. I still have maybe 100 of them. We talked about editing when we were looking at those photographs. He would send me resin-coated pictures so we could have a conversation on the phone. And it's amazing the beautiful work that he did about the issue. And that's his wife, by the way. The photograph before was his wife. That's his wife, pregnant too. So, and she's also a photographer, and they have a problem. They don't always remember who took which photograph, because they've been working so close together for such a long period of time. And he took this at Savell's house, Becky's house, when he took a picture of the group. Stephen Callis is a colleague, but Callis, his work has been around for a long time. He's been photographing the bridges along LA River. And they're quite beautiful. If you looked at the catalog that they published, there's 3 photographs of that book, and they're quite out. You have more of them there?
I only have this one.
Yeah, because that's the one.
What did you say is now?
Huh?
What did you say about what he's doing?
When you start teaching full time, you run out of time to do your own work. That's why, I never thought about going to a university, but a university faculty member in photography will teach maybe 2 classes a week maximum. And people like me, I was teaching 5. So you don't have a lot of time to work on your own work. But I think this is a large format camera. If you can see if you look at it closer, you can see it's a very long and very sharp image and beautiful image. But it couldn't be done with an iPhone. It couldn't do it with a 35mm camera. It's done with a.
Is he using an
4x5?
8x10?
Yeah, no, 4x5.
Okay,
Yeah.
4x5.
Yeah. Very, very nice, I think. And then, of course, Jonathan, which is back here, he really got interested in the culture of Chicago, and the immigrants in Chicago are amazing because people make a living doing all sorts of things, and they open up businesses. I assume that most of you read the statistics on how much money income is entered into the economy because of immigrants. Because not people who are working for a corporation, but people who are working for themselves and producing output that people are happy with. The things that are usual in the film. And these are very nice. These are 35mm. Well, they're not 35mm. They're the high-end Canon small format camera. Beautiful. She actually went to my house. She went to my neighborhood one day because I asked her if they were still selling sauerkraut from the barrel. We always had barrel in our grocery stores, right? You remember that? Yeah, everywhere. Yeah. Pickled Street. We had Pickled Street, all that stuff. Yeah. Now, there is a string running through this work, and that is the China period. We have a lot of people who have gone to China. John Castillo worked in China with Hartung, and so did Forbes. And I knew Forbes was going to be a special student because I went into him, and I went in every day. He had this violin that he made. He took a class in making violins, cellos, and he made it, and he took the time to photograph it. I mean, he used hours and hours and hours and hours of time photographing. I think one of the things of photography that is crucial to me is you have to be patient. You know, it's not going to happen. You know, it'd be nice if you could run around and take a lot of pictures, and you do. You do that anyway. I do that anyway. I don't pay any attention to what's going to happen with the photograph until later. Right? In the beginning, I'm just attracted to something, and I'm not even sure what it is at that time. But then I take those photographs. And so Forbes, I suggested to Forbes that he get together with Hartung, and he ended up in China. And now Forbes is living in Mexico, and he's documenting artists in Mexico, which is doing video this time, and some still, but not videos. So this is a cellist, a cello maker, making this instrument. Excuse me. This is sort of directly connected to me, because when I went to school, I went to the Institute of Design. I was enrolled to 2 classes at the same time. I was in the Institute of Design at IIT, and I was involved in a music school full-time. I couldn't make my mind between being a French horn player or a music teacher or a photography teacher. And I was enrolled full-time in both. I said, the hell with this, I have to make my mind, because I can't do both. I can't go to 2 classes a day at Dr. Nutt's school. There were 2 people there, and there were 2 people at IIT. I mean, how can you do it? You can't do 4 days or 5 days classes a day. It was very difficult. So I photographed my French horn, which was the secret to my energy about what I'm doing in photography, is how do I get rid of the photography into the French horn, and I did. And I took a wonderful photograph. I wish I had brought it, but there's too much time to carry around all that stuff. But Forbes is a terrific photographer. Conrad has a wonderful photograph on her wall in their bedroom. Next one. And Lee Corkett is an interesting guy. We just the 3 of us, Hartung and Corkett and I, went to a British exhibition in Fahey. Tremendously interesting work. And this is his son, and he photographed his son. And he graduated from UCLA, not as a fine artist, but he graduated his degree with an anthropology. I've always thought that anthropology was the best thing to study after you take 2 years of photography. Because number one, what intellectual scalpel do you use to look at society? I mean, what do you look at? I mean, that's the question. So Corkett did that, and he's well known, and he's working and he's taking photographs, and his wife is now photographing too, I understand. So that's their son, wonderful, wonderful person. It really, this is things that happens in life, you know. Do you all have mothers and fathers who were involved in your education? Mine weren't at all. I mean, they paid the bills, so that was nice. But they really didn't care about that. They showed up for the concert when I played my French horn solo. They showed up for that. But William Duke, he was also a graduate of Art Center College of Design. We've had a number of people graduate at that period. Some not happy and some unhappy. It all depends on how you, but it's a very expensive operation. And William adopted Photoshop like it was something he was swimming in from the beginning of his life. And so he did a lot of illustrations. Is there another one next?
There is one more.
Yeah. And he did a lot of work for magazines and well-known photographers. He lost most of his collection of photographs up in North California, where he lost his house to a total fire, wiped out the entire place. So it's really kind of sad. But he was an interesting. I always wonder about parents. If you're a high school teacher or if you're in middle school, you have contact with parents. Very few faculty teaching run into their parents. So William was sitting in my, William was going to move to Art Center College of Design. He had finished one class in the summer of beginning photography, and he wanted to go on to Art Center College of Design. So his father called me in my office in summer. He said, "I'm going to be at your office tomorrow at noon." "Where are you calling from?" He said, "I'm calling from Washington, D.C. We'll be there tomorrow at 11:30, which is, I understand I checked your schedule, and I know you have an office hour at that time." I said, "Okay, all right." So he showed up, and he looked at me, and he said, "I just spent spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars getting my son through psychology in California University, Santa Barbara. And now he tells me he wants to spend $80,000 to go to Art Center College of Design." And he said, "Is it worth it?" And I said, "Yeah, he's a very talented guy. He did some really interesting work in his beginning class." And then what I didn't know was that the father also made an appointment with the director of Art Center College of Design, Potts. And he also agreed that he had the talent. So he went to Art Center College of Design and finished graduating because of that. He's a very, very, very neat, cool guy. Okay, John Gordon is I think early when he started in the 70s, somewhere along, he was always interested in photography. And he was a very quiet guy. And I was over at the conference, actually a class in Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, with the university. And I took a class with Norman Locks. I don't know if anybody ever saw Norman Locks work. He was an SX70 photographer with a Polaroid. And one of the things he did was really amazing. He would make this landscape photograph, then he would slide it open, the SX70, and he would put in little toys of cows and things inside the SX70. So the SX70 was three-dimensional and two-dimensional. It was very, very interesting. So I was talking to John about it because he was sort of, he was doing the old Friedlander. If some of you know Lee Friedlander, that's what he was really doing back then. But his work was not anywhere else. So I suggested he try it. Then he got involved in shooting the street photographs, which I think is a wonderful image. I love this. He did a whole series on graffiti, a huge, huge series. Spent all of his time in Hollywood and all those areas. Yeah, I love this photograph. It's very nice. Next one. Is there another one? No. He also had a series of pictures of kaleidoscopic photographs, which were very interesting to look at too. Randy called me just a few minutes ago before I got here to say that he can't make it. Will you please video what's going on so I can watch it later? You know, he could. He's working, so he couldn't do it. So he had one client. You know, he had one client, and it was bringing in thousands of dollars every year, because when you have a good client with a lot of money, you make a lot of money. But what's the problem? If the art director is changed, you may no longer be the photographer that they change. And so therein you have to struggle with that, finding a new assignment. So I always told her to do a portfolio. And she did some really good portfolio portraits in the past. And so my tree in the backyard collapsed. I had a big mulberry that I missed and loved, 50 years old, and it collapsed over. And so he showed up with my dog Bella, and he took that photograph. And I love this photograph. He took a number of good photographs that I like. But just the other day at the reception when we were here, he said to me, I want to take another photograph of you. I said, no, come on, go find somebody else. I'm too easy to photograph. The photograph on the announcement, that's a photograph Dan Winter did of me. And he did it something I learned very specially about how people think about photographers. Dan said, I'm going to take your photographs today. We were in Savannah. I said, sure, okay. He said, okay, sit here. And he said, I want you to take off your glasses. Okay. He said, take off your hat. Okay. So it's the only picture I think that it's very interesting. I've got it looking. It keeps me very interesting because it's interesting to see me in a way that I never thought of myself, which is as I get old. So it's a lovely photograph.
John, real quick, can everybody hear in the back?
Yeah.
Just want to double check. Okay, great.
Who's next?
Still Randy Harmon.
This is Randy Harmon. These are early Randy Harmon when he was working for magazines and doing portraits. These are quite lovely. Dave Hartung was in China a lot. He's in China right now, I think. In fact,
Yeah.
he
went back.
Yeah, he went back because he's got his studio, he's got equipment, he's got all stuff in China, and he couldn't get back in until recently when they gave him a permission, a visa that they go in. And these are portraits of Chinese people in China that he photographed. And he was an interesting photographer. He carried around with a roller suitcase with about 6 or 7 or 8 different flash units. That was his whole lighting system. So everything was always lit. Very little was ever shot by natural light. Everything was shot artificially. And if you look at his food photographs, if you ever get a chance to look at it, his food photographs are remarkably beautiful photographs. So hopefully, and he has a close connection with the Chinese and people with chefs, especially with chefs. He has a good sense of humor, good rapport with other people. So I think there's a couple of beautiful photographs. And you can see you can see the lighting. It's not natural light; it's artificial light. But it doesn't look artificial. It just is the way that it looks. I love that beautiful photograph. And Karin Josephson and Leslie is a student of Moorpark, and Karin is the technology person at Moorpark College. She takes care of making sure everybody can operate her prints and make her 30 by 40s or whatever size they want, or whatever little ones that they want to make. So these are a series of photographs with pets. Some people have pets, are connected to them, and I don't think there's too many of them here, except my dog. I don't know how many dogs there are. When I was first teaching, I took a workshop with a photographer who was a teacher, and I said, is there a rule that you would follow? He said, yeah, no pets, no girlfriend photographs. I said, oh, okay. Because I don't care what you photograph. It doesn't really matter what you're photographing. But there is an issue when people take continuously pets and they become cute and cuter and cutest, but they're not necessarily really interesting. But I think this is very interesting. I like the womb-like feeling in the portrait and the lighting of it. So it's quite beautiful. Is there a next one? Yeah, that's another one. Same thing. And that's, of course, I have a dog that when you jump in your lap, she hugs against your face. You know? She's always just pushing you back because she wants to hang on to it. So this photograph sort of reminds me of that whole issue. The idea of a chair is so important. I mean, I have taken so many photographs of people sitting in a chair. Like, I have a picture, I still remember my daughter and her cousin that was shot in the backyard with rabbits, right? Very beautiful book. By the way, if you have questions, just yell out, okay? Please, yell. Don't make me talk up.
What happened to your French horn?
Huh?
Whatever happened to your French horn?
My French horn, I sold it. You want the truth? I made up my mind when I was 20 that I was going to go off and find an island off somewhere else in the world where I could create a new civilization. So I had to sell my French horn in order to finance my trip and anything else. So I sold everything I had. My friend Bob Bender, he died, but he taught English literature. And I would drop in on his classes. He would ask me to come in and respond to the students' writing in online. And he always told them the story about I sold everything and I went to the wrong coast. You know, you don't want to go to the Florida area if you want to buy a boat, but if you go to California, you're going to get a better deal than you're going to get in California. So that's why. All my money went up in the air. We had 3 of us all putting our money in the same purpose. And then Matt's here, so Matt is here. And then Matt and I, we would go along, we got along very well. That's Matt over there on the wall over there. That was part of a sequence of photographs of mine where I thought I was tired of people aiming the photograph and trying to figure out which picture do I take. So I photographed people, I hand them an air bulb, and I set the light, and then they pick the moment by talking or not talking. Becky's got one, I know, and you have one too. Yeah. So it was a nice series, a beautiful series. But these are, what a joy you have been, what you have been in my life. You know that, Matt Mahurin?
What's that?
You're precious to my life. You know, so he used to come over and do Photoshop demonstrations. He's probably the best Photoshop person I ever met. And this is that's part of his book here that I showed earlier, the Tom Waite book. That how long were you working on that project?
Just on and off. I've done videos for him and of course for Rolling Stone and done, you know, all the kind of cool jobs you could do. And I was going through my negatives one day, and I would just, as I was going through them, I was seeing all these other wonderful shots I'd done. I'm like, hung out with them, become friends, and I realized these negatives were just going to be kind of destined for dust and decay. So not only was I upset, I was pissed. So I called him and said, you know, how would you feel if I did a book? And he said, sure. You know, and so I would work on it on and off for a few years in between other things. So I would use them as jumping off points. I'd find a negative of him and turn it into something else. And this is just a portrait of him and I could dabble on the top, shoveling stuff into his head. So I would take a picture of myself and then turn myself into the devil. And so it makes it drawing and photography. So.
Are you still using that little Leica digital?
No, I use, I just, like my Hasselblad is just sitting on the shelf looking at me, like, what the fuck? You know, the Leica said, yeah, me too, would it? You know, so I'm pretty digital at this point, but I'm getting ready to get back and going through these negatives and making some prints.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had so much good fun at that period of time. And Matt was working for a number of magazines, and he would show up at school to do a piece for the magazine. And he had about an hour and a half before the piece was picked up. And he would come in and start, and an hour and a half later, he had turned it into something wonderful, something gold, you know, it's just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I brought the book if you want to take a look at it later, you know, it's worth your time. It's a beautiful work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Becky Savell. Well, Becky, God, we go so far back. I think we go back to prehistoric times.
Yeah, ancient times.
You're not supposed to say something like that to a woman, John.
Yeah, I can remember you when you were cutting out mannequins and you were burning them in water and stuff.
Milk, yeah.
They were interesting, and then I still have one of those things you did with fluids and shiny objects. And she went to Art Center College of Design and graduated from there, and she went to New York and did work there. So she's very experienced. I always thought about part of our responsibility back then was to try to help people get a job in whatever they want. I mean, like Nancy up front, she took one of the best photographs during my class with Harry Callahan's wife in the background and my shadow. She took this picture, and I loved it from the beginning. I saw it, and she knows that. And she's a geneticist. Yeah, she's got her PhD in genetics. So, people move into different worlds. It's not as easy as you might think it was. And this is one of part of the issue with the agriculture exhibition. John Nichols was here.
The exhibit is called Art About Agriculture at the Savell Art Museum, and there'll be some photographers and 60 artists. And it opens November 12th.
November 12th it's open?
At Savell Art Museum.
Okay, good. We'll have to go.
It's the 14th annual, so some of you might want to enter for the 15th annual.
Yeah. Anyway, what surprised me about the simplicity, which is something that's characteristic of you, I'm not simplistic. I can't believe in a composition that's clean and simple. It's got to be cluttered and complicated and all kinds of crap going on at all times.
We've all seen your desk, we know.
What did you say?
We've all seen your desk, we know.
Don't have families around when you're No, I'm only kidding. You know that. I'm only kidding. I have space. I've got space everywhere. Everywhere. I have a table in front of my television set. I have one in my kitchen, and I have my dark room. I mean, I have stuff everywhere. It's just clutter. It's supposed to be clutter. And part of it is coming. I have a new interest in art, and that's the work of Wolfgang Tillmans. I don't know if any of you see his work, but his work is really interesting to me. And his exhibition style is really amazing. So, but I love the simplicity of this idea of tying twine. Where did you get what is that, twine or is that?
Yeah, it's rope.
Rope.
It's rope. Yeah, I don't know if you remember one of my first photographs that I did in your class way back was of carrots in milk with confetti.
Yeah.
So I've grown up. I've matured now. We're using rope.
Well, I don't know about that.
John, do you see people do that a lot, where they start out with you and they have a certain trajectory in their work, things that they're photographing that they revisit later on? You start to see what they did in the beginning.
People visit their ideas, the things that are closest to their heart, closest to their eye, closest to their mind. That's what I think that's what we were hoping people would accomplish. I mean, John Gordon, a story about John Gordon, when he did a really wonderful series of photographs, Polaroid, 8x10 Polaroid photographs, worked at Susan Spiritus Gallery, and they were beautiful and wonderfully done. But when he switched to something else, he switched to graffiti, Susan Spiritus was not interested in his work. See, and that's part of the problem of portraits. Portraits have a value in the subject that cannot be ignored. That photograph upstairs of Dan Winters of Obama, it's more powerful because we know who it is, and it's the president, and it's in the president's office. But I think carrots are very nice too. I think they're just as, in fact, I think they're more important than presidents.
Obviously.
That was lovely. Shall we move on? Okay, you got your.
Okay, Richard's here too.
Whoops.
Richard's work is up. They're on the wall there. I just sent her a note today. But he went. If I remember right, the first time you went abroad, you went to Iraq after the war broke out. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah, and you took you a long time to get across the border.
It was an adventure.
Yeah. And so he went to Ukraine, and he's photographing with an 8x10, right?
Yes.
Black and white film, and took these pictures. Some of them are so beautiful. They were so elegant. I think it's really amazing what you can do if you just set a white background behind someone and you photograph them as you talk to them and see what comes of it. And I think those are, of course, this is all influenced pretty much by Avedon too. You know, Avedon made life a little simpler to think about when we thought about portraiture and the work of backgrounds for them. There was something special about the Avedon white background that is still sort of pops into your brain every time something happens.
This is a shot well image,
Yeah.
not the one on the wall.
No, that's okay. Yeah. I think they're quite lovely, the photograph. One I looked at just this morning, I think it was a new one I saw posted. By the way, I hope you, well, all these people have places, I think, on Instagram. Most of you probably have. You have one, right?
Yeah.
I think I have some of it too. No, is this yours, Richard?
Yes, that's in Cuba.
What?
And I was in Havana.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, and then Dan, I brought his book in case you want to see it. If you haven't seen it, some of you have seen it. I guess I'm going to have to get up. Oh, thank you, Doug. Book of Dan Winters. Mostly because I wrote the introduction. It's such a funny thing. What happened is one day my granddaughter, Samantha, came along and said to me, I didn't know you wrote something. I said, why? Well, she's searching for me, John Grzywacz-Gray, and she found this book. But that's not why I love the book. I love the book because it's got the widest grade of work. This was done at the Museum of Modern Art at Savannah, Georgia. And what's cool about this is that he not only has the work of photographs, but it's also got work of painting with ink, with developer, and all sorts of processes, collages, all kinds of things. And of course, his love is the space world. He's photographed at almost every launching that's ever taken by the government, and he's been there to photograph it. And he was there to photograph them when they moved across Los Angeles, when they moved it into the, where did they move into? In science, music of science, right? Science, yeah. But this is where, I think this is a wonderful book, and if you haven't looked at it, you have a chance, so you can look at it. I love that shot. I mean, it's so interesting, you look at this, and then you turn it around, it's funny. You know? It's a sense of humor as well as the seriousness of that ramjet targeting at me. So if you want to take a look at it later, you can just sort of walk into it.
John, do you think in Dan's work, you know, he's taking straight portraits. He's using all the things that a powerful portrait will do,
Yeah.
and then he's interrupting it with something
Always,
else.
yes. Yeah, I think
Has
that's a
he
good
always
thing.
done that?
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, that's what he did to me. You know, that was a class example where just take off your glasses and take off your hat, because I always wear a class.
Mhm.
That was a hat. And so that. And of course, this was a lot of people got sort of irritated by this because there was the Avender photograph of this also. But getting her to do it, that's another thing. I think this is lineage. It's connected to Leibowitz, Annie Leibowitz as well. So there's something about the portraiture, and his lighting is special. And in fact, he's writing a book right now on artificial light. And that's, of course, a wonderful. Everybody almost tries to take this photograph of the president in silhouette, you know, in the Oval Office. Beautiful. Big prints too. Those are wonderful print. And that's space. But that takes a lot of time to arrange. You know, you can't just go to a launch. You know, you just can't walk up and say, "Hey, I'm a photographer from Moorpark College." Although I could write, I can't tell you, a number of people got through. I sent notes to the people at Vandenberg, and they got in because they're college journalisms. So they can go in, have the same right as anybody else as when they go in, unless it's top secret or something. But that's a beautiful photograph. It's the cover of the book he did. He's a hard, you know, when I think part what I think is important. I always tell this story. I mean, this scenario. When I came here to Moorpark College, I didn't know what the hell to do. You know, I had to figure out what it was that I expected from the students. Not me. I was gonna learn eventually or not. I mean, at the beginning I was sort of clumsy, and you know, people walk up, people didn't show up, or whatever. But the thing is that I realized I had to figure out who are the people I'm sitting with, talking to, and so I have 3 grading systems in every photo class. The first one is the hobbyist. You want just give them all the encouragement they can to keep growing and developing. But then the next group is probably the professional photographer. And you have to, that's a different group of people at the same time. And then the fine artists are another group of people. So so I always had 3 groupings, grading systems. And so that people who were really good, talented, always got hard grade. I mean, it was impossible. I mean, not really. I was that mean, Matt.
Oh, you're so mean. That was one of the best things about you.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite teachers are the teachers I like hated the most for some moments. And for one reason, they had me figured out. There was no escape.
And that's part of it. That's part of it is you're part psychology and part teacher and part photographer and part of all that stuff.
Babysitter, you're the babysitter.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah. So that's part of what I like about teaching too, is the ability to have that flexibility.
1 second, guys.
Yeah, no problem. I'm good. You said, anybody have any questions or comments or something? Really? Me?
Who did you fail the most? Who got an F in your class in one of these?
None of them.
None of them? Disappointed.
He got a D. John Castillo.
Oh, I'm sure he's very proud.
Bromberger. That was an interesting story. He was working for the school paper, you know, and he was the editor, and he took the photojournalism class. And so I walked up to him and I said, you know, I'm going to give you an A, but I should give you an F in all fairness to everybody else. And he said, still he doesn't believe me, but that's true. I sent him out to we sent him out to photograph the woman who is answering the phone. You know? And he brought back a picture of her nameplate on her desk, not in person. So we have, which I understand. I understood that was okay. That made, if you know her, you knew the name would mean a group of people, a group of behaviors, etc. So, you know. And this guy, Roger Tully, that was a whole interesting problem. We had Gregory Nava teaching movie making in Moorpark College, filmmaking, and Gregory Nava did El Norte, and he did Selena, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And so Tully was torn between photography still and cinema photography. And so I used to have to, he was my assistant, and I had to search for him. And I always just go to Nava's classroom, and I'd grab him by the ear and lead him out, you know, because he did it. But when the Canon video capability came built into the Canon, he went video. In most of his work He's now done commercial work, industrial work, so that kind of work. And he was, I lived in his apartment for a week and a half in New York. Very, very talented photographer. And you know what makes the difference? All of you who want to be photographers, there's not too many of you who want to be photographers. You have to have the personality to talk to people, right? That's the number one thing. I think in every job, you have to be able to talk. Matt Mahurin was at the college, and he got a telephone call from, I think it was Forbes magazine or something, and they called him, and he said, "Do you mind if I put it on speakerphone? I'm lecturing to students, showing them Photoshop," and he negotiated a fee on the phone. And so the students could say, "Hey, this is real. This is a real world, you know. This can really happen if you're doing your thing." So Roger did some beautiful work. Except his apartment, when I was there were no place you could sit, where his seats weren't there. There were holes in all the seats, but not anymore.
Now we're at
That
this guy.
Yeah, this is strange. This was a very interesting set of problems for me. I got really involved in, this is probably done by David Hartung. This is my favorite, one of my favorite other portraits of me. Becky Savell took this photograph in my backyard. That's my mulberry tree that came down behind it. And then I did my first self-portrait in life was done in 1954. I started taking self-portraits back in 1954. I was exercising the French horn out of my life. No, I was. I said, how do I get rid of this? I don't want to be consumed. I'm still consumed. I go to LA Philharmonic, like the other day, 8 horn players. By God, I was in heaven. You know, they were so beautiful, such beautiful players. Anyway, so I photographed myself superimposed over the bell of the horn, and in 1954. I'm still hanging the original print on my wall because it faded and all kinds of stuff. But I kept it to remind me that I had really started making these kinds of photographs in '54. So, and this one is the one, I love this photograph too. This is the one that is on the book. I should make a big print. I'm getting to the point where I want to make small points. I'm always sort of irritated by big prints. I don't know. But I think I'll make them a little bit bigger. I think I can make them a little bit bigger. I love
So
this
you're
one,
obviously
too.
on Instagram, John.
What?
You're obviously on Instagram.
Yeah.
Should we follow you?
Yeah. Well, they send me notices every day.
I'll take that as an invitation.
Yeah. And this is one of my irritations. I think text and photographs are important. I don't think just publishing photographs for themselves and say everybody should be able to get whatever they want from it. No, I want to write text that accompanies the photographs. I want them to be in the photograph. I learned that. I took a class with Ralph Hattersley. I don't know if any of you ever heard of Ralph, but he told us to photograph things that are written on the, or write them down yourself and photograph that. And so this is my granddaughter, Samantha, wrote this, I think, wasn't it, Sam? Wrote it on a mirror, and I couldn't resist the photograph. You know, work hard, that's right, work hard. That's right. And this is spontaneous. This is a Cartier-Bresson photograph. It's a self-portrait, and that cat was up on my shoulder. King, he's still around, right? And there he was, clawing away behind biting on my hat and going away. I love this cat. He's beautiful. He is beautiful, right? He.
King.
Yeah, King. Yeah. Next.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
I have a question, John. You curated one of the only shows at Moorpark College that I know of cell phone
Yes,
photography.
I did.
And so you were a big proponent of utilizing a cell phone as a camera.
Good, that's what I do.
I know that's what you do. As opposed to, trying to preserve this icon of, a traditional camera. So what was your thought process with regards to that?
Well, when I started taking photographs back at the Institute of Design in 1954, I started. I had to buy a 4x5 camera. I mean, the first assignment required a 4x5. And so I went to a pawn shop, and I bought a camera, 4x5, for about, I don't know, maybe $35. But then I had to buy a lens, I found out. I mean, God, you got a camera, what the hell do you have to buy it? You got to buy a lens. So I bought a lens, a rectilinear, which is probably, I bought it for $5 at the pawn shop. And then they said, well, you got to have film holders. Oh my God, another thing. So then I found used film holders so I could take the pictures. And so I think that's the process. The process is that you accumulate knowledge as you slowly gather it. You're not born with all that information. Some people are born with some skills that I don't have. When I got hired, not hired, but was accepted at IIT. Illinois Institute of Technology was the third most important engineering school in the United States. And I had to take the same tests as they test. And so I remember I was rebellious against the institution's rules. They were going to change it from a fine art focus to a commercial focus. And so I came in and told the director from IIT what an idiot she was. I wasn't so nice about it back then. And she said, well, you're just lucky that you were accepted. I said, what do you mean I'm lucky I accepted? He said, because you were tested for high spatial awareness, and that's why we took you in. I said, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't even know what that was. So it was a very interesting program. As you're doing things, you just do your best. And my whole life has been one example of experimenting. In 2004, I went to Social Security and collected $4,500 because they couldn't give me any more back pay. So I bought a Canon D10, which was after the 60 series, 30 series. And then I went to a sabbatical, and I went to Poland. Some of you know, remember some of you contributed to my trip. It's very nice. It's a very nice trip. And I took photographs there. And so I'm not sure that there shouldn't be a flexible approach to what you photograph. I don't have to take rules too separately. I just have to try to make something worth looking at and that moves me and hopefully moves somebody else. That's about it. But I think most photographers are like that. I mean, I took a workshop with Emmett Gowan. I don't know how many of you remember Emmett Gowan's work. His family, those photographs were so incredibly emotional to me, so overcoming. The whole beautiful, beautiful impact. And my teacher, Harry Callahan, without him, I was dummy. He always called me dummy because I was 17 and everybody else was 30. Because the freshman class is a foundation class. Everybody has to take the foundation class. So if you got a master's degree from RIT and you came to the Institute of Design, you had to take the 2-year foundation period. You couldn't just go in there and get credit for what you did in the past. You had to start with the rules that the Bauhaus, new Bauhaus, had Laszlo Moholy-Nagy and his group of people. So, it was hard to be a young kid, 17 years of age, like Bromberger, and who else? There's some other 17-year-olds around here, I'm sure. Oh yeah, Hartung was young. Yeah. So I think it's like, it brings me joy, it brings me joy, photography. I did want to I wanted to hype something today also. There's a movie which you have a hard time finding, okay? But this movie is called Art is a Weapon That no, that's not it. What is it? Oh, wait, I'm looking for it. Where did I put it? You know, that's the trouble when you have so many things slipped down. Anyway, there is a movie, Bloodshed is in it. It's a movie made, Potier, a woman director, P-O-T-I-E-R, who did a story on Nana Golden. How many of you know Nana Golden's work? Yeah, she has always been a powerful impact on her work is just remarkable. And he is fighting the family that is exploited opiates and is responsible for many deaths, period. And so the movie is made to attack the Sackler family, who produced and made all these opiates available and gave them multiple prescriptions that they shouldn't have been able to get. They were just using too many drugs that were killing people. Thousands of people died because of the Sackler family. So the movie's only been in town for one day. Only one day, and I wrote it down, but if you're interested, send me a note and I'll send you the, just for my own personal, I was thinking about this and I was wondering, how many photographers have I really looked at? And you know, I think 600 photographs, photographers' names that I've been looked at, and I still look at, you know, and I
John, if I pass around a pad of paper to get people's email, can I email?
repeat that?
Can I email the information to people?
Yeah,
about the
I'll
movie?
send it to you, yeah.
Would you, if you're willing to? Put
Oh,
your
I'm
name,
more than willing to do that.
and
Anything
email?
that does work for me.
I won't spam you, I promise. Unless, you can put a little star if you want to hear about what's going on here.
You can send me your.
Thank you.
So I'd like to get the photographers, and I know all of you are photographers that took classes with John, in the video that I'm recording. And so maybe you could come up and just say a memory that, something that you remember from class with John. And maybe Sharon Hardy would start first.
No, I have to think.
No, you're too shy.
She did, I'll tell you something she did that was really special. I was teaching the photo history, and I prepared a final exam. And I was always in a hurry, so I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And after the test was over, and I collected them, Sharon raised her hand. She said, "Do you know that you had arranged the photographers in alphabetical order?" And if somebody had mentioned that, it would have been a very simple solution to answering the question, because A comes after B after C after D, you know. And she was the only one in that class that actually saw that. Yeah. I wouldn't have noticed it. You know, I didn't notice it until after she reminded me.
I'm Nancy Parmalee. I started taking classes with John in 1989, and I'm sure we've talked about this, John, but my first class was a summer class, and I didn't tell John at the time, but my sister had died of leukemia just 2 weeks before, and so I missed the first week of class, and I came in and I had to request permission to add, and I walked back towards the wet area by the equipment locker, and I said, "Are you Professor Gray?" And he said, "Oh my," like that's the nicest thing anybody said to me. But my father took classes with John when I was this high, and there was a dark room in my parents' bedroom where my dad he would let me put the paper in the developer, and I would see the image come up. And then when we discard chemicals in the bathroom sink, seeing them change colors when they mix together. So John has really been a presence in my life ever since I was a child, because my dad had so many stories about how tough he was. And so when I started taking classes, I expected, this really like kind of curmudgeonly, very tough, and I found John to be, I think, the most empathetic person I've ever known, and just so concerned with. I learned photography in that class, but more than that, I learned life. John taught life, and John, you're my favorite professor. I've been to Moorpark and UC Irvine and Columbia, and out of all the people that have taught me in way too many years of education that I've had.
Well, you have it if you're going to be a geneticist. Right?
You remain my favorite professor ever.
The photograph that she took when I was in front of Eleanor was, the room was so cold, and we couldn't get the air conditioning to warm up. And they wouldn't do anything, so I brought in a metal form, and I started a bonfire in the classroom, and I called the college president to come over and see how we deal with the coldness. It was pretty interesting. So they fixed it up. I'm not hesitant. I'm not afraid to try something.
Works pretty well.
Well, most of all, John, you've been my mentor. You knew from the beginning. I think I started in the journalism program.
Right.
And I wasn't a photographer. I was only interested in technology. I was a computer operator in the 1970s. And I knew from the beginning that this could be incorporated into the world that we lived in, which was journalism and photography. And what John did for me is, as a mentor, he would take me to the demonstrations of brand new technology. And it was 1985. We went to the Doubletree Hotel in Oxnard. Do you remember that? And we saw a demonstration of a Macintosh computer and a laser printer. Before that, it was the Lisa, but I hadn't really taken that too seriously. We saw this demonstration, and he said, "You can do this. You can use this in what you want to do," which was, I was actually graphic designer and I think art director of the newspaper at that time. And 2 weeks later, I spent $14,000 on a Macintosh 512K computer and a laser printer that had 2 fonts, Times and Helvetica. And I was just over the moon. And I got a scanner, which was called a Thunder Scan, and it fit on the plate of an image writer printer, which was a 72 DPI dot matrix printer. And I started printing out images and photographs on that, and I still have those at home. And for many years, we continued to stay on the edge of technology. And I think it was 1987 that John and his colleague, Roger Carricker at Santa Rosa Junior College, contacted Apple Computer to let them know what we were doing in our journalism program. And they took it very seriously and invited us to demonstrate that at their EdgeCom conferences, which were people from all over the world came to these conferences. And we produced an on-the-spot newspaper with photography. You remember that?
I remember hearing about it. I remember hearing
So,
about it.
he mentored me all along, and not only that, not only did he started by bringing our own computers into school and doing it that way. But then he went on to multimedia and developed that program. It's incredible, the new and novel things that he did and brought to the school before they were anywhere else. It's just amazing. And I'm so proud and honored to have been a part of that and a part of your life all these years, John.
Thank you. You know, there's something that I did with you. The tax people got after you.
Oh, yes.
When she had that $14,000 she had spent, the IRS came after her.
The IRS came after me. I started a business in September after I had purchased all this equipment. And I was working out of my home because, again, John said, you can do this. And they came after me, and I fought them over a period of 4 years because they said I was just a hobby. And they wanted another $200 from me. I was like, I'm not giving you guys $200. This is my business now. I'm starting a new business, and I specialize in doing newsletters. And it took 4 years, and John, after 4 years, I was a nervous wreck, falling apart. The bill got up to $900 because they kept reevaluating my case and raising the fee on me. And he said, well, you know, here's what you need to do. You need to write a letter to your congressman.
Gallagher.
Yes, Congressman Elton Gallagher was Republican.
Right.
And, you know, I had no idea what would come of this, but he really, you know, did a great job in helping me get a review with the supervisor at the IRS. And after 5 years now, they said that it was the worst case of taxpayers' rights abuse they had ever seen. They gave me back all my money because I paid them under protest. They gave me back all my money and apologized, and penalties, they paid it all back to me. And then they wrote a new law,
Yep.
a new taxpayers' rights law.
Thank you, Nancy.
I love you.
Well, I love you too. That's pretty much all I was going to say. No, I don't have a single memory of showing John a photograph or asking advice on a photograph of the exposure or composition. But I've had teachers that are hard asses, and I've had teachers that are lovable. But I've never had a lovable hard ass teacher. And other times when I just hated his guts, man, I would like walk out of that place and I'd go, what an asshole jerk, you know, as the tears were brimming up in my eyes, like this guy's on my ass every day. And I think really what it boiled down to, but I kept coming back. See, that's the thing. I've had, that's the greatest teacher. The teacher is this teacher that drives you nuts, because you know the deepest part of you. He was like connecting to who I was going to be, not who I was. And he could see that. He had a kind of vision, you know, clairvoyance, that he could sense from intuitively or through the work that he saw that certain students would do, that they, you know, he could see maybe where I could go or what I could do. And I think he had just enough of a hook in me that I couldn't quite swim away. I couldn't quite get away. And he'd be able to somehow reel me back in. And I keep coming back into that amazing class and that amazing darkroom. And, you know, the stories that have been said, I can't really add to the profound effect that he's had on people's lives other than saying that he knew that I needed him, even if I didn't know it at the time. And that's why I kept coming back, because there was some sense of that. So for that is what I'm most grateful for. And I love you so much, and thank you for everything.
Thank you for everything. Oh, John,
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I just want to tell everyone how much this man has changed my life. And not only a photographer, but as a graphic designer. And he really, when I started taking a photography class in 2007, summer of 2007. And before I was taking, photography courses in high school, but they were always afraid of me to do the basics because of chemicals and developing and stuff like that. So I went over, summer of 2007, I went over to Professor Gray and said, I want to take photography. How can I do that? I really want to do that. And he said, okay, let me take you to the room, to the classroom, and the dark room, everywhere, so you can see that you can do that. And they have a table specialized for wheelchairs that's low enough for the enlarger. And it's such an amazing thing, and I really enjoyed it. And thank you for all your teaching, because I never forget it, because it's just one thing you always say to me. You can do things. You can do anything you put your mind to it. You have an eye of photography. And the other thing that I remember very vividly, he said, just get out of your comfort zone. Don't sit in your comfort zone. Get out of it. And that point on, from 2007 to 2010, I decided to get a photography degree at Moorpark College. And I got a lot of jobs after I graduated, and thanks to you, and you're teaching many other professors as well. Because the youth are teaching us how to be creative in the photography aspect of it. And not just to make it simple, but to make it different from your perspective. And it's really, that's truly amazing, and thank you for the long journey that I had with you and your classes. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for opening my eyes.
No, you're amazing. Your mother is amazing.
And I think it was the first time I had a professor actually made me feel like I was an artist. Because I think my college experience up to that point was just, sitting and learning and understanding and having interest in it. Being a participant, but truly being a participant in my own life and cultivating myself as an artist, I had never experienced that until I had met John. And honestly, I wouldn't sit on his lectures. I asked him, can I just go in the dark room and then show you stuff I did after? He said, yeah, as long as you write down your question of the day and give it to me, go right ahead. And I think I just want to thank you for that, for opening my eyes to working on myself. And I think of, in what you said earlier about projects, I think of everything in terms of projects and communicating to others. And I think it's so important that we as artists communicate to each other, create a circle of empathy around each other, have movie nights. I invited you to a movie night. Yeah. We watched Rashomon at a theater in Los Feliz, and shortly after that, I think COVID happened, and I haven't reconnected. But I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to continue the connection with John.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I was one of my dad's students, and
yes.
I made sure he knew I needed an A, and he said, I'll give it to you if you want it, but I earned it. But the thing I learned the most from my dad is, if you don't know, I'm a teacher, is teaching. Because you all came in at different, it's wonderful to meet all of you, and you all came in with different expectations, and he guided you that way. And it didn't when he told me he had a student who said, I'm not going to do any of your work. I'm going to do what I want to do. I was amazed. Like, what teacher says okay to that? My father. What teacher says, who cares if they don't get A's on all this, but they pass a test? Give them the A. And I learned that from him, and it was very valuable lessons. The stories he told me about the ballet dancer who, is spinning and doing ballet and not paying attention to the other classes. And the teacher said, put them in ballet. Like, don't have them do the other classes. That's their passion. And so, even though I teach middle school and their passion is hormones, that's it. It's pretty much all hormones. I do see, these little glimpses that remind me of what an amazing person he is and how much he gives to other people so openly. And he's always thinking, and I don't know how he does it. It's exhausting. I come home from work and he knows more things than I've learned in a day. And I always equate it to, I feel like I live with like Bernie Sanders sometimes, who's always thinking and pushing for the best, or Martin Luther King Jr. It's hard. I love him to death, but it's a hard life sometimes. He is an amazing person, and he's always writing. I mean, he has folders, and the yellow pads, he has like 20 of them at least. He's always writing ideas, so he's an amazing person and a lifelong learner, which is what I appreciate. I'm okay. I'm okay.
Part of what Karin just reminded me is the fact that I've always been interested in education. And it began with my daughter, Cecily, who was born back in 1960. And I started worrying about education right back then. I read Montessori, I read other people, but the one that's avoiding me right now is the English guy. Anyway, Waldorf, but there's the free guy, the guy in New York, in Chicago, in Hollywood, the Hollywood school too. They don't make you teach. They don't make you learn. They don't make you read. They don't. In England, it's a boarding school. You don't have to read until you're ready to read. And so some of them will wait until they're 12 years old to start reading, and then they still get into the universities in England. Which is something about we underestimate the capability of what children and young adults have within them. I mean, I've seen it. My daughter was in Midtown School, which is a very progressive school in Echo Park area. There was nobody telling you what to do and what. I mean, I should have gotten combat pay when I was helping as a volunteer to help pay the tuition. I mean, I was talking to somebody, and this kid who was about 6 years old, she comes up to me and she hits me in the head. And I'm bleeding. And I said, why did you do that? She said, I don't like you. I said, okay, all right, okay then. So I think it's something, I think when people talk about the lapse or the decline of democracy, it began with the freedom that children had when they were younger. My mother and father never had any rules for me, unless when the street light went on, you had to be home. They had no idea where I was going or how long I was there. I was always somewhere else. And there's a streetcar. I go anywhere. I didn't have to worry about any of that. Unlike today, I watch people walk through my neighborhood. Yeah, they have to always be with their kids. Their kids can't go by themselves. I mean, that's maybe a problem of society. But the fact is that it also may make it difficult for people to act in a democratic way. And I think schools need to be democratic as well as society.
I think we have a couple more people.
Oh, John.
Hi, my name is John Thorson, and I go back all the way to the mid-'70s with John, classmate of John Gordon and Saul Bromberger.
Do you remember when we tied him to a tree?
Yes, I do. And I still to this day have a lot of blackmail photos. And I'm sure that if the administration had seen or heard what we do in class, he wouldn't be here today. I went in with very low expectations. I was just taking an elective class. I had an interest in photography, and I just didn't realize that I would get hooked like I did. To say that the way John taught was a lot of fun. Not only did you learn things, but he made things very fun to be there, both in the lab and in the classroom. And two of the best memories I have of my whole life were on spring break when we took trips to Yosemite. And we had about a group, I believe it was like 25 people. And it was more like a camping, photography, humanity. I think we got credit also for humanities too, not just for photography. But it was just one of those things where, you go in and just to take the interest and the information that he was giving, I didn't realize that I would get that hooked in photography. Through the years, I never made it a career, but I still did things on the side, weddings, sports action photography, and he actually convinced me, he knew I loved sports a lot, so he convinced me to take the photojournalism class and do a lot of sports action. I'd shoot the Moorpark teams and stuff like that. And actually one of the events was the exotic animal training compound that I got to cover, and that was the only time I was ever on TV, on the news that night. But John was just, to say that he's a unique person is an understatement. And I really enjoyed my time there. I enjoyed it so much that after I got my AA degree and went to Cal State Northridge, I went ahead and continued for a couple of years after that, going back to Moorpark to take more photo classes with him. And once I had him, I can honestly say I did not know any of the other, I knew a few instructors, but he's the only one that I took my classes with because I enjoyed him that much. Thanks, John.
But I started taking classes from John right after high school, and what was funny to me was we would be learning the very technical aspects of photography, the zone system. We'd be learning how to print, really well. We'd be learning about the masters and so on. And then John would throw everything out the window and just talk about ideas. And that's what we would spend class talking about, was concepts and ideas and current events and all kinds of interesting things. And that was really what we were all focused on. And the community in the classroom was what was most fascinating to me, because there are many of you here today who I've been friends with since those days, since the 70s. And then I returned in the 80s. And then I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I couldn't decide between going the route of a fine artist or going to commercial school for commercial art. And I did ultimately end up going to Art Center, but I was studying at Art Center with people like Mahurin, who were also basically fine artists. And then a bunch of us moved to New York. And so we all pursued our careers at making money, making a living, doing our art. And we all had our own individual styles. And we have, become friends and stayed friends throughout all of these years. So then life goes on, a million years go by, almost, and I come back to Moorpark College, and I'm still taking classes at Moorpark College, and I meet a whole new community of younger artists, and many of them you see on the walls here. And that is just one of the most wonderful parts. And continue to remain friends through all of these years. This is what you see here on the walls. And this is part of what John created. So.
And she started me raising butterflies. There's something wrong with me. No. I did, one of the things, I'd like a couple of say things about people who aren't here. I mean, people who couldn't hear. Nancy Barton, I don't know if anybody remembers Nancy Barton, but she left us, she took 7 years to get her bachelor's degree and 12 years to get her master's degree. And she was fine art director at the university. And right now she's operating a community art group in Prattsville, New York. It's wonderful, but she's a brilliant photographer back then. She also I wanted to thank, I remember, I was always going to put a picture up on the wall because one of my friends who argued with us, and Nancy will remember them, I think, Jeff Widener, who shot the Tiananmen Square photograph. He was a controversial person in our group because he was a male chauvinist of the first magnitude. And then we visited recently Dan Gross. Somebody remembers Dan Gross, but he was one of the early students, also done wonderful. They're all wonderful people that are all over, that are still around. I hope they're corrupting the world around them. But I don't know if they can, But there are a lot of good people a lot of people who left and didn't go to school, and they didn't make a big job, but they make a living out of it, some money on the side, whatever it is. So I've always been proud of the fact that people make the time to be able to talk you into hiring you to take portraits or do their baby photograph. Or they don't do babies anymore because they do these narratives, these complicated narratives that they have to do. But thank you all for being here. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you.